Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, Mighty Bjorn, and here we are with a brand new Community Steel video. I know a lot of people have been waiting for these, and since the new patch came out, and partially because of the update video I did on the whole Community Steel thing, a lot of people started sending me messages with tank designs. I mean, just over flooding my box. So it's nice to see that this Community Steel thing has actually gone much further than I honestly would have ever anticipated. And I just want to take some time to say, yes, I'm back in business. And thank you very much, folks, because I do appreciate the views, the likes, the comments, and just the participation that I'm seeing from the community itself. Anyway, let's dive on into today's episode of Community Steel. Now, we're going to kick things off with Substep. This is KVP T107. This is actually a late war tank, and it is a 33.5 ton tank with a 107 millimeter gun, and it's actually got 200 millimeters of penetration. It's actually decently well armored and is very mobile up until the point I got it stuck because I'm old and shit. I'm going to try to get it free here. But it's actually not a bad tank. I like the design. Now, this is actually a patch 0.1112 vehicle, folks. But it's actually still pretty effective and useful for the new 0.113 patch, which is where we get the free-forming hulls and turrets and stuff like that. And that being said, honestly, I really like the design of this vehicle. It's got a Soviet feel to it. Even though it's not all definitely inspired by Soviet vehicles, to me it kind of looks like he's kind of kit bashed a bunch of different designs to make one design that looks very good and seems to be very effective in my testing. Now, the next vehicle today is the LMTK H6107 by Substep, and let me tell you what, that is a real tongue twister. So, Substep, please, buddy, let's work on these titles here that you have for your different vehicles, your names. But this is another late war vehicle. It is a 54.5 ton, so it is on the heavier side of the vehicle. And this definitely reminds me of something like an IS-6 or an IS-2, whatever. Something in those realms. It does have a 107 millimeter gun, and it's actually got 206 millimeters of penetration. It's actually got a bit more penetration than the previous one, because the gun barrel is actually a little bit longer than on the previous vehicle. The reload's pretty decent. The mobility's okay-ish. I mean, it is kind of sluggish, but it is on the heavier side. It's a better armed and armored vehicle. So, I mean, it's going to take some hits without, blowing up in your face while you're trying to cruise around with it. And, of course, I'm driving on some pretty rough ground here, so that doesn't make it any easier. Now, out of the vehicles I've tested in the past that were definitely influenced by Soviet design, this one has a bit more gun depression, but it's not something I'd write home to mom about in the way of gun depression. And, well, the gun's kind of slow moving, but you can't have everything. The next vehicle here, we have an M1 Abrams, and this is from T-Rex 2040. Another one from T-Rex, folks. He's a returning designer. And this really isn't a bad rendition of an M1 Abrams. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest thing I've ever seen from the community of Sprocket, but it's not a bad rendition if you want to say, hey, okay, it's an artist rendition. It's not, it's not the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It's just not the best. That being said, the armor's fairly decent, especially on the turret. The hull's a little bit more to be desired, but it does got really good gun depression, and it has a 105 millimeter main gun, and it's actually got a pretty decent reload to that main gun. It is 58 tons, and it's actually pretty mobile for being a 58-ton tank. It felt like to me, he emphasized the mobility over armor, which that's not always a bad thing. Mobility can get you far in a tank battle. The next vehicle here is the Rizzo D1235 from Drift. And it is a 15.3 ton tank destroyer with a 155 millimeter main gun. That is early war. Wow. That's a little big. He probably could have got away with a 75 or something like that, but okay, 155 millimeter main gun it is. However, there's a lot of problems with this. I'm going to say while the vehicle looks awesome, and actually it doesn't drive bad, combat performance-wise, this vehicle is horrendous. He really needs a longer... I would actually go with a lighter shell, a lighter and longer shell, especially for how short he made the main gun. And I see what he's going for here. It's kind of like that, kind of like a mobile SPG, if you will, or a support vehicle, kind of like the Bison that the Germans used to have. Yeah. Okay, the next one we have here is the MK35 Cal Gazelle, and this is from German Train, folks. Yes, he's back with tank designs now that the patch has dropped. Kind of like me, going back to doing Community Steel videos, German Train has peered up with his head and said, I'm making tanks again. And this is his first tank that I've seen for patch 0113. This is a 33.4 ton tank with a 90 millimeter main gun. It's got 144.7 millimeters of penetration. Now that being said, the armor is decent, but it is definitely not very mobile. It is on the slower side of vehicles. And that being said, this is kind of in that medium tank range when you're talking late war. I mean, it feels... He was definitely inspired by the Shot cowl that the Israelis used, which was definitely... It was just an upgrade program for the Centurion. It's not a bad vehicle. I definitely wouldn't knock this vehicle. It's just, its mobility is kind of like, okay. It's a heavier tank with essentially a meteor engine, which is, well, that's the Centurion. So there you go. And it definitely looks like it's inspired by that. Gun-wise, well, if I wasn't old as shit, the gun-wise actually isn't bad. It does struggle a little bit at some of the longer ranges, but definitely at medium range, it's a rather good gun. And it's got some rather decent penetration. And that being said, he kind of modeled everything. I mean, it's got a searchlight on it. The engine deck looks amazing. I like how he's got the tracks on the rear. I like how he did the side skirts. I mean, this vehicle looks good. I like how he's got like the applique armor plates on there. And from what I can tell, they're just applique armor plates. They're not... It's not like he used fuel barrels and covered them up to call it ERA. It feels like it's just solid applique armor plates. And he's got them on the front of the turret as well as a couple plates on the roof of the turret, which is pretty much what the Israelis did with their Centurions. So there we go, folks. Another one from German Train. He's back in business just like I am, folks. Now, the next vehicle here from Dentorum 1948. This is his Dicker Max. I really like the Dicker Max, folks. I have a soft spot for the Dicker Max because of World of Tanks. It was definitely one of my favorite Tier 6 tank destroyers. Even though it really wasn't that great outside of having, like, awesome gun depression and really good camo. And, well, that being said, this is... Looks-wise, it looks like a Dicker Max should. It definitely has the Dicker Max look and feel. It is 38.5 tons. It's actually quite heavy. He's got this as a late war vehicle with a lot of armor. It does have the 105 millimeter main gun that can really hammer shots home. But that being said, if you're looking for an accurate rendition... you know, armor, mobility, the whole 9 yards of a Dicker Max. Well, this doesn't have it, but it's still a very good looking Dicker Max itself. And personally for me, I made mine, I downloaded it and made modifications to it to essentially thin out its armor, put it in an earlier period from when the Dicker Max was actually built. But yeah, I mean, it's a heavy essentially he's got this set up as like a heavy tank destroyer. Think of along the lines of like a Nashorn or, well, the Dicker Max. It's just better armored than it should be. It's actually got a lot of armor. Really had to thin it out. Mobility-wise, for how heavily armored it is, it really isn't bad. He definitely thought about mobility. It's not something to write home to mom about, but it definitely can get up and go when it needs to go. As you can see there, I actually took a shot in the rear plate and survived. It actually did penetrate, although it didn't hit anything important. But anyway, that's Dentorum's Dicker Max. Sorry about that, folks. My wife just came home, so my dog decided to go ballistic. You probably still hear him in the background. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you all enjoyed this Community Steel video. There will be more Community Steel videos in the near future. So please like and subscribe to the channel, the whole 9 yards. And I really wish my dog would shut up. Anyway, have yourself a wonderful day.